Hello, hello, DM Geezer Jim here, continuing along in our Chapter 3 DM's Toolbox, reading the frickin' manual, the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. We are starting line by line, sentence by sentence, starting at the front of the book, going all the way to the end, spending the majority of the stream time, the majority of each of these episodes. We're just going to read the book with a little bit of personal commentary based on my experience at the end, my experiences at the end of each little thing. So if you're just here for the audio book, as soon as I finish that chapter, go ahead and push the pause. But if you want to hear my commentary, hang out for a couple minutes. But the next section that we're looking at is Chapter 3 DM's Toolbox, a section called Death, the scary part. Again, before I get into commentary, let's just read what's here, right? So, death. Adventures involve risk with consequences that can be as catastrophic as the death of a single character or an entire group. Given the degree to which players get attached to their characters, character death can be an emotionally charged situation. It might even be a hard limit for some players, see Ensuring Fun for All in Chapter 1, so it's worth having a conversation about how to handle character death at the start of a new game. Death must be fair. The best way to avoid hard feelings connected to the death of a beloved character is to make sure the players know that you're being fair. Keep these principles in mind. Don't cheat in the monster's favor. Rolling dice in front of the players when a situation is especially deadly is one way to communicate that you're not cheating in the monster's favor or singling out a single character for punishment. Don't make it personal. Don't punish a character for a player's behavior or some personal grudge. That's probably the quickest way to undermine your players' trust in you as a DM and as a fair arbiter of the rules. Provide fair warning. Let your characters face the consequences of their foolish actions, but make sure you give enough cues for the players to recognize self-destructive actions. You might want to ask a player, "Are you sure?" before committing a character to a potentially fatal course of action. The next line says, fair encounters. Your players have to know that you're fair in designing encounters. It's fine to throw tough encounters at them and sometimes let them face monsters that they cannot beat. But it's not fair if the players have no way to know they can't win the fight or they have no way to escape. Scaling lethality. You can adjust the lethality of your campaign using the encounter building guidelines in Chapter 4. We'll get there. If your players enjoy games that test their characters to the utmost and are prepared to create new characters at a moment's notice, consider using high difficulty encounters over and over with little opportunity for rest between encounters to create a more lethal adventure. Conversely, using only low difficulty encounters is less likely to lead to character death, especially if the characters have ample opportunity to rest during the adventure. Defeated, not dead. If you and your players agree to avoid character death in your game, you might consider an alternative, a character who would otherwise die is instead defeated. The following rules apply to a defeated character. Comatose. The character has 1 hit point in the unconscious condition. The character can regain hit points as normal, but the character remains unconscious until they're targeted by a greater restoration spell or experience a sudden awakening. See below. Sudden awakening. After finishing a long rest, the character can make a DC 20 Constitution saving throw. On a successful save, the unconscious condition ends on the character. On the failed save, the condition persists. The next section is death scenes. When a character is reduced to 0 hit points, the player sometimes has to sit out 1 or more rounds of combat with nothing to do but to roll death saving throws. One way to keep a player involved in the game is to prompt some role-playing along with each death save. You might ask the character to describe a memory that surfaces in the character's mind while hovering near death. Consider these possibilities. On a successful death save, a memory that inspires hope and courage, a beloved person who would urge the character to cling to life, a thought of something to live for, a favorite childhood memory. On a failed death save, a memory that stirs up shame or grief, a beloved person who is already dead, beckoning the character to join them. Go to the light. An experience of weariness or despair can also be described. You can also reward a player who describes a memory or something else occupying the dying character's thought with advantage on the death save. When a character dies, either from failed death saves or from the effect that kills the character outright, consider giving the player some ownership over the character's final moments by asking what the character's last words are or how the character greets death. Dealing with death. When a character dies, consult with the players to decide what happens next. Some players are perfectly happy to make new characters, especially when they're eager to try out new options. A new party member should start at the same level as the other characters in the party and have gear of similar value. It's also possible for dead characters to be brought back to life. The most common way is through spells such as Revivify and Raise Dead. It's up to you to decide how easy it is for characters to access these spells if they can't cast them. The Player's Handbook offers suggested prices for these spell casting services. But what if everyone dies? Misadventure can wipe out an entire group. You'll sometimes hear the players refer to this as a total party kill or a TPK, total party kill. Such a catastrophe doesn't have to end the whole game, rather it presents an opportunity to take the game in a new direction. Consider these possibilities. A fresh start. Everyone makes new characters and the campaign starts anew. This might be the most drastic option, but allows for new stories and fresh character dynamics. Divine Council. The characters find themselves before a council of deities who are arguing about the character's fate. The characters must convince the council return them to life. Escape from the underworld. Excuse me. The dead characters wake up in Hades and must find a way to escape the grim underworld and return to the world of the living. Imprisoned. The characters wake up in cells, kept alive and imprisoned by their foes for some purpose. Raised by another. A powerful individual finds the adventurers' bodies and has them raised from the dead, putting the adventurers in the debt of their rescuer. What if the adventurers wake up decades after their death, returned to life by a resurrection spell cast by someone who believed they had an important role to play in this future era? A rescue mission. The players create new temporary characters who are tasked with retrieving the bodies of the fallen heroes so they can be raised from the dead or given proper burials. If the dead characters have bastions, see Chapter 8, the stand-in party consists of hirelings from those bastions. So that's the section on death. Not a ton of stuff here, but some important stuff. So let's kind of unpack it a little bit. The first thing I fully agree with, you must be fair. Before we go into that, your players need to be aware that death is a consequence of action. Part of the challenge of D&D, the ultimate risk is losing your character. If there is no risk of that loss, then your campaign might short circuit. But you or your players may feel differently about that. So make sure that you've discussed that in your session 0. Hey, I can and will kill your players. If you walk up to a dragon and he breathes on you, you can turn into a pile of ash. This can happen in this campaign, so make sure that's been established. Definitely reread the section on death must be fair. As long as your players know you're not picking on them, targeting them, or just being unfairly heavy-handed, most players will accept death as a consequence of the adventuring life. Definitely make sure that they know that when they're supposed to run, that there's a chance for them to run. You don't want to drop them into a 200-foot shaft and have them fall into a pit and Tiamat standing there, and they know they can't fight Tiamat, but there's no way for them to escape. That's not a fair encounter. That's not a fair way to deal with it. Don't make it personal. Some dude pissing you off at the table, don't just keep killing their character over and over again. Just if they're that disruptive, have them to leave the table. Don't use death as a way to even the playing field over a personal slight. That definitely will impact the player's trust in your ability to be fair. This is a very important section. Your player character death must be fair. Scaling lethality. This is, again, kind of up to you. I do appreciate the guidelines they give in the Defeated Not Dead. You can go, a defeated character could potentially go 2 or 3 adventuring days before they're fully able to recover if you use these rules. It might be a little bit more onerous for gameplay pace if the defeated character is not able to succeed on their roll, on their DC 20 Constitution save, though, to come back conscious again. Then that means the party's still responsible. Carton is passed out due to round for a little while. This method might lead to slowing down a campaign a little bit, but it is in my opinion, it's an effective way. It's an efficient. I don't want to say efficient, but it is an effective way to handle character death without killing them. You're making the player, they're unconscious until you get better, man. Sorry you kept missing your throws. So it's an interesting way to look at the defeated, not dead. Scaling lethality, this is just briefly mentioned. There's a lot more information in the encounter building guidelines in Chapter 4, and we'll get there. But yeah, you can make the campaign more or less deadly by following this advice, okay? Death scenes. This is pretty fun because, yeah, you're going to have players that hit 0, especially when you get to the mid-tiers. and they'll be sitting out the combat round hoping that they can get their rolls to pop up to stabilize. Even then, they're waiting for someone to come in and heal them so they can get back in the fight. Give that down player something to do. Let them go ahead and describe what's going through their player's mind, the character's mind, if you want to have with it. Okay. Dealing with death. This is a conversation for the table. You should have had this conversation before the game started, obviously during your session 0. But I think dealing death and everyone dies, those two go hand in hand. When it's a TPK, what's next? Now, you should have had a little bit of that conversation at the start in your session 0 as well. Hey, if we run a TPK, is that the end of the campaign? Do we want to roll new characters? And you might find somewhere along a campaign, it just doesn't make story sense for a new group of people to suddenly pick up the mantle and continue forward into the plains of Avernus. I killed my party at the Hell Wasp nest in Descent into Avernus. TPK, they're dead, they're gone. Do we suddenly have a new party of adventurers show up and pick up where the other group left off? Do we come in from a different tangent? You decide this with your group as the Dungeon Master. There is no right way or wrong way or one way to handle a TPK. There are some good suggestions here, but be aware if you're using a Divine Council or Escape from the Underworld, you need to make sure that you have your Pantheons established at part of the game. You need to make sure that you have your extra planar life set up at the start of the game. The rescue mission, there's a couple other options here, but yeah. Some interesting, quick advice to deal with player death, okay? It's going to happen. What happens when they all die? Here's some options. But more than anything, if you take anything out of this video, number one, understand that death needs to be fair. When you kill the player characters, they should have seen it coming. They should have known that there's a chance of this happening, and it happens. You shouldn't be cheating to kill somebody, even if it's a plot device, man. Set up the encounter to be hard. Don't cheat in their favor. You want your players to trust that you're running the game fairly, even when it goes against them, okay? So more than anything, the most important thing in this section, in my opinion, is the first part. Death must be fair. Thanks for hanging out, guys. DM Geezer Jim. We're continuing along. Probably the next section will be doors and dungeons. We'll see. I'm going to take a look at it. But hey, we're going to continue this series. We're going from beginning to end. Push that like button. Push that subscribe button. Jump over on Twitch and push that follow button over there and join us live for chats. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you for the next episode. Take care.